Okay, so anyway, welcome. And so this class then, of course, will be like you're sitting in the buyer's position, and so you would be presenting it to them. So if you want to use it in your listing, in your buyer presentation, you're welcome to. Let me know if you want me to send over the full printouts, then you can just use it. You can even take it as a PowerPoint, and you can put it together as a slideshow for your clients as well. If you're going to meet with people online and do Zoom with them instead of meeting them in person because of the virus going around and everything, that would be a great way to put this together and for future use. So this is a home buyer's blueprint, and I took a lot of this information right out of our iPro library. So there's a lot of great information in there. So make sure if you don't access that, make sure that you do and you know what's in there. There's a lot of really good material in there. For buyers, sellers, just all kinds of different marketing ideas and advertising and stuff. So if you haven't been in there, make sure you go in there, especially Max, since you're new. So this is a for sale fixer-upper. Should we buy it, or would you prefer to stay married? Isn't that right? It's just such a trying time for people when they're going through the purchase of a home, whether they're building a home, they're buying an existing home, or they're selling their home. Either way, it's just really taxing on their emotions. And so something to keep in mind that when you meet with buyers for the first time, or buyers that haven't bought in a while or something like that, make sure that you're understanding of what their needs are and how stressful it can be for them. If you're trying to come up with new clients and you're trying to figure out a way, where do I get them from? I'll make some suggestions to you. So buyers are a little bit different than listings. Listings, you can go on KSL, you can drive around, look for sale by owners, so the signs are popping up. You can do expired listings, that they've been on the market and they didn't sell. But buyers are a little bit different. So if you don't have a huge sphere of influence or database that you're working off of right now, or maybe you do and you're just kind of not knowing how to get a hold of them, what to say, some ideas that you might want to come up with is this benefit of homeownership pamphlet you could put together. Would be really good to give to young couples that are coming out of school, college, thinking about getting married. A really good source for that is your social media. So if you're watching through your Facebook pages, it's kind of hard because it seems like it limits who you get to have contact with. That's just kind of the way they do the algorithms or whatever you want to call that. But there are a lot of people that are renting now. And even though there's a lot of rentals that have gone up, and it looks like and it appears to be that that's going to be the way most people are going to live because the payments on them everything's gone up so much. That's not necessarily true. They will still look into purchasing. They just have to have somebody educate them. So when you put together a packet, if you do something like this, it's a really good opportunity for you to talk to people about the things that they can benefit from to buy a home. And so I really like this because, of course, education research shows that children of homeowners earn higher test scores and graduate with a higher percentage of those than those that are renting. Owning your home, of course, makes you feel happy. You've got great tax savings. You get the appreciation that you don't get when they're renting. They can get good equity in their home. And then, of course, they can put down roots. They can have their children there. They can move on, go into another bigger home or whatever later on. But when you're thinking about who to contact, people that have kids, people that have grandkids. I would suggest that maybe you start to think about putting something together that you can pass down and give to people, so that as they have their family members coming into town, or they've got, they're moving here, relocation companies, other realtors in other states that you could maybe get a hold of and send some information to them so that they can start referring people to you. There's so many different ways to get buyers. And so you just have to really think outside the box, because a lot of people don't do that. They wait for the buyers to show up. They wait for somebody to mention that they have a friend or family member or something. So when you're talking to people on just say a regular basis, you go into a grocery store or you go to an event or something, and you start asking questions, the one thing that these are some of the questions that you want to ask people. So if you're not really sure where to start, this is a good start and checklist, and I call it a cheat sheet for you guys. So when you're talking to people, these are some things that you can ask. And, you know, first of all, you want to say to them, you know, the things that are important. You don't want to come out and say, do you have good credit? But you can tell them how important credit is. And there's always another source from that. So if you, sorry, I've got a phone call coming in. I didn't know that that was on. Dang it, that's a past client of mine. Anyway, so when you are talking to people, there's this annualcreditreport.com that has all the credit bureaus and everything that they can go into just to check. But there's also credit repair places that you can hook them up with too. And so that would help them to, that's exactly what these people that just called me. It's been over a year since they contacted me about one of my listings. And I sent them with a loan officer. They weren't quite ready to buy yet. And so I offered for them to go to them, go do a little bit of credit repair, and they've done that. And then they called me about, a month or so ago. And so I sent them back to the lender because they thought they were ready. And he pulled it again, and it's a VA. And so there's a couple things he wanted them to do. He said, I want you to go to Mountain America Credit Union because they're easier to get into. And I want you to open up, you know, a card and do this and this. And he walked him through the steps, and he told him, if you'll do this for the next month, then you guys will be ready to buy in another month. So evidently they're probably calling because they finally got the news that they're probably ready to buy a home. So people that don't think they can, you know, they just need educated. They just need somebody to take them by the hand and give them guidance on the best way to get in a position where they can. So, but questions to ask, do they have good credit score? Do they need to work on that? How much can they afford if they want to buy a home? Do they plan to live in the same area for the next few years? Can they afford repairs and maintenance? A lot of people don't like to buy a home because they think that repairs are going to be too much. And they like the idea that if they just rent, that the landlord has to make all those repairs. But in all reality, it probably ends up costing them anyway because of the payment that is so high. There is no deductions. So overall, it ends up costing the renters more money. Oh my goodness, my phone's just ringing like crazy. But as far as the utility costs and everything go, there's, you know, it's always, you got to weigh it out. And people don't realize sometimes that even though those things are going to be added in, again, the rents are so expensive right now that they can probably get into a cheaper home for a lower payment, even if they buy a condo or something. So, but these are the 10 most common home buyer questions that are asked. And I hope that you guys can see that. It looks clear on my end, but I've had people saying lately that they have got, for some reason, it's going blurry on your screen. So if you want this, make sure and let me know and I can send it over to you guys. But so then the next step is once you talk with people, you know, say, what is the first step in the home buying process? And the answer is the mortgage pre-approval. So this is a great checklist for you when you're working with people to take them through the process. And so, and it kind of reminds you of the things that need to be done, because sometimes we forget that there's other things besides just filling out contracts and negotiating and things like that. How long does it take to buy a home? You know, right now it's usually between 30 and 45 days. That could change just depending on what the market does and the economy does. Do I need to go through the listing agent to see the property? And so these are kind of the questions you're going to give to them and make known to them that no, they do not have to go through them. These are the kind of things that we forget to tell them when we first meet people. And I think that's a lot of times why we get frustrated when the buyer goes and meets with another agent, or, you know, gets another agent that kind of grabs a hold of them and takes them through it. And so if they know this from the very beginning and you put together a presentation for them, there shouldn't be any, you know, reason why they don't understand what's going on. It doesn't change it all the time, but I would imagine that most of the time it would stop that frustration that you might have from them going somewhere else. Do you do all the searching or do I keep looking myself? And the answer with that is both. You can tell them, you know what, I will search, you tell me what you're looking for, but also if you find something that you're looking, you know, that you look at and you're interested in, you need to let me know so I can line it up and we will go take a look at it. How much do I have to pay to you as a buyer's agent, as the home buyer? And the answer with that on here, of course, it says nothing, but that's not necessarily true. And so we don't want to mislead people. Of course, if the buyer's agent is being taken care of on the MLS and the listing agent has agreed to pay that, then of course that is covered. However, if they go to a for sale by owner is not willing to pay the commission, then they could be responsible for that. So that's the time to have those discussions, because as that comes up, then you've already cleared the air with that, and you don't have to worry about that. They've already went and looked at that for sale by owner, and now you got to explain to them, how does that work? Do I have any other fees besides the down payment? And the answer is yes, they have closing costs. And between 1.5% to 3.5% of the sales price is typically what the closing costs are. The best way to know is to talk to the lender and ask them exactly what they're going to need. And you'll want to do that ahead of time, because you don't want to be writing up an offer and then wondering how much you're going to ask for. So if you get in a situation where you're just not sure, your best bet is to probably at least do 3%. If you're not really 100% sure, you can't get a hold of the lender and it's last minute, I would say 3% would probably be the max, but that should cover most everything. So, and then of course, do I have to submit any money prior to settlement? And the answer is yes. There's earnest money, possible home inspections, possible appraisals that they may have to pay up front to the lender, things like that. And what I like about this is it breaks it down, and it kind of tells them exactly what they can expect. And so if you get to the point where you're trying to remember everything that you're supposed to tell them, that's why I like this checklist so well, because it breaks it down so that you can go through each one. And honestly, if you're going to go over this and you're going to have a checklist in front of you with people, I would have them initial each section as you go through it, saying that they have read it, that they understand it. And then that way later on, of course, you have a paper trail to show that you did go over these things. If something happens to go wrong with the contract and the deal, and people want to come back on you, this is a great way to go back to say, hey, listen, we did go over this prior to even writing the offer, and these are the things that they were told about. So it's a really good way for you to keep yourself safe. So of course, the homeowners association, they don't know what an HOA is. So we have to remember to explain to them in their terms of what it is that we're talking about, because they don't know what CC&Rs are. They don't know what HOA is. And honestly, a lot of agents really don't even know themselves what it is until they get in a situation where they have to work with it. So of course, you'll want to make sure that you review that with them. If there is an HOA listed on a listing that they're looking at, just know that normally there is a HOA fee that's in addition to that they will have to pay. And so if you're talking with the lender and they say they're really tight on their payment, they can't go higher than $300, and that would put their payment at X amount, you have to remember that if there's HOA, that has to be included too. So they may not be able to qualify for as high amount because that HOA payment's in there. So that's something you'd want to bring up to the lender as well. Of course, the HOA is all the common areas like pools, clubhouses, landscaping, all the work that they may do as the HOA. And CC&Rs, the difference is that's the covenants and conditions and restrictions. So those are certain things that you'll want to know about. You guys, I'm gonna have to mute you for just a second. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Okay, gotta love those kind of calls. I wouldn't normally do that, but she said she's so excited she can't stand it. They're finally approved. So anyway, funny how things work out, right? Like you talking about these kind of things and all of a sudden that comes up. I don't know if you guys believe in that kind of stuff, but I certainly do, especially lately. Anyway, so let's see. I don't get to see you guys' faces. I hate this. I only get to see your picture, Margie. So I'm going to take it that you're smiling at me. anyway, so of course, how can I be sure that I'm not purchasing the money pit? They can't. And so the only way to know is to, tell them that you really highly suggest that they get a home inspection. And of course, not only home inspections, but you can have other people come in too. So I have had people where they've asked me, what do you think is the best way to go? Should I get a home inspection? Should I have certain people just come in? And, the answer is always, of course, whatever they decide to do. But there are times that I have felt like it was better to have them have a plumber come out, a roofing, electrical, all of the different people come out, at least that were licensed, because when they do an inspection on a home, they're not licensed in those areas. So typically, home inspector will say, I suggest that you get with an electrician. Well, if they're already going to pay that and they're going to have to call them and have them come out now, sometimes it may be better if they know people that are already in them fields to have them come out. So, so the answer is that yes, we never know, but to do an inspection. What's the best advice for first-time home buyers? And that is be brave, because they do get really scared. They get buyer's remorse. Explain to them what that is before you even start looking at homes, because when they start having those feelings of, oh my gosh, are we doing the right thing? Or, maybe we should wait. If you kind of talk to them prior to and let them know that that's normal, then they don't feel like they're alone. They feel like, oh, okay, that's just part of the process. And so we want them to think out of logic and not emotion. So I think that it's really important, especially during the due diligence period, that they understand all of the things that are involved. And that, again, is something that you would want to talk with them about. Okay, so let's see, buyer brokerage, meaning, definition, and explanation. So this is probably one of the most important parts of what we do besides writing up the REPC. Because I think that a lot of people tend to set aside the fact that they need to explain agency. Number one, I think it's because a lot of agents are nervous to do it because maybe they don't know it as well as what they should, or maybe it's because they're afraid that if they start explaining what buyer agency is, and that maybe they're not going to want to sign with them because they don't want to be under contract with somebody they hardly know. My opinion is that if you explain to them what the understanding of a relationship is prior to, and not when you're writing the offer, that I think that you will eliminate that when it will make everything so much easier for you. So this is what you would want to talk to them about. And this is going to be the expectations that they need to have on you. So your expectations is that you will view and look for all available listings, not only from our extensive listing database, which is the MLS, but from any other company, and from, even for sell by owners, if that's necessary, especially right now, because we don't have a lot of homes on the market. We do have to go look for sell by owners. We might even have to knock on doors in areas they're interested in and ask people if they're thinking about selling, which is a great idea. I mean, I know right now we can't go out and do a lot of door knocking because of COVID and everything, but I've still had a lot of people come in my door trying to sell me stuff. So if you're not trying to sell them something where they're irritated with you, but you could go up to the door, maybe even with a little flyer or a postcard that says, hey, I just wanted to give you my information. We work with a lot of buyers in our company, and we're just making sure that whoever needs a home, we can find them what they need, and we're willing to even go above and beyond what's already listed on the market. We want to find out if you're interested in selling your home, and if you are in the future, please let us know. That way they have your information. I would suggest that you give them that maybe on a magnet so they can stick it on their fridge or something that they can hang on to. Of course, you want to talk to them about showing them new construction as well, because most every builder is typically willing to pay for the brokerage fees as long as you bring the buyer to them and you register them. So you need to make sure that you're explaining to them that if they go into new construction or an open house somewhere, that they need to let them know that they're working with you so you can represent them. But most of all, you want to tell them the reason that you want them to be aware of that is you don't want them talking to the seller's agent or the builder's agent that represents only the seller. If they start talking about their financial situation, they may put themselves in a real position where they're going to jeopardize their bargaining negotiation tool. And so that is probably the biggest reason you want to tell them that they don't want to do that. And then of course, to follow it up with, of course, you know, I would represent you. So you want to make sure that you let them know about me. So of course, we can tell them there's other sellers that we can represent. As far as, you know, possibly they don't know, I mean, people that are coming up with something, our office may be coming up with a listing that, you know, hasn't came out yet. We don't call them pocket listings anymore. But anyway, so the appointments that you make, let them know that you will make the appointments once you guys come up with a list of what they want to see, that you're going to come up with that. So that way they're not contacting the listing agent. And I think that that's a lot of situations that we run into with a lot of agents, is they get frustrated because the buyer calls the listing agent not knowing that they shouldn't. And then the listing agent goes and shows it to them, and then all of a sudden now you've got a problem because they think that they're the procuring cause, and you know, all of those things. So that can be eliminated just by having those discussions with them ahead of time. Of course, point out strengths and weaknesses, which you might be unaware of. So if there's something they need to have that you need to be aware of, there are certain type of properties, if there are certain areas that they want to be in, they just need to make sure that they're telling you everything that needs to go into the process of finding them the right home. And then of course we'll negotiate in their behalf, and then that will allow them to make their own decisions. So, you know, you need to let them know that you work for them and that you do respect their opinions and their direction, and that you're not going to force anything onto them, that you want them to make the final decisions on everything, that you're just there to guide them through the process. And then of course you'll attend all the details, the deadlines, negotiations throughout the whole transaction process. So I know that's a lot of information, but you need to let them know what it is. So I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about listings and goal setting and stuff like that. But if you don't know what your value is, and you don't know really what it is, your job that you do, that you can explain to your clients is, this is a great checklist for you to start looking at and memorize all the things. You can even advertise with this. So if you wanted to do some advertising on Facebook or any other social media, on your website or something like that, this is a great form that you could actually put on there to show them what it is that you do, you know, what makes you so valuable. Any questions so far or comments?
Nothing so far for me.
Okay. Am I talking too fast?
No, I think I'm just taking notes here. I think you're going at a
okay.
great speed for me. So.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So then, of course, now that you've told them what it is that they can expect from you, you want to, in return, tell them what you ask of them. This is so important. This to me is like the main page that needs to be on the very front. But, you know, if you put it in order, it comes along perfectly. So you're not being too overbearing. But so keep me informed as to any homes that you're interested in throughout the visit, even open houses, internet searches, driving by for sale by owners, whether it's listed with a real estate company or not, or a new home development. And then, of course, inform the other real estate agents and builder representatives that you're working with me as your buyer's agent so they don't violate the laws of agency. That's a really good description, I think, for us to give to them. So if you really want to explain to them and they want to know, well, why, what's the difference, right there really, I think, says it all. So they don't violate the laws of agency. That to me sounds like a law. Of course, it's not really a law that's something that the judicial system is going to come after them for. But with our ethics, through what we agree to as realtors, that's what that is. But I think it makes it sound a lot more serious so that people take it serious. Of course, be honest with me about what you like or don't like about any home you are shown. Of course, to let them know your feelings don't really get hurt. It doesn't matter to you because it's them that's going to move into the home. Tell me if you don't like the area or you don't like you know, the homes that we're looking at. Tell me why, and tell me why you want to go somewhere else, or what area you want to be in, so that we aren't wasting time on things they're not interested in. So, and then of course, a big deal is give me as much notice as possible if you can't make a showing appointment, and also when they need to schedule an appointment. The one problem that I've seen that new agents really, really have a hard time with is they want whatever comes at them. And that's okay, except for you still have to have some kind of boundary that you need to set. Your clients don't need to know if you have a birthday party that you need to go to for your niece or nephew or grandparents or parents. If you have a time frame blocked out that you know is important, that you need to be there with your family, you just let them know that you already have a prior commitment, that you could move, you know, you could possibly do it at this time or this time. The other thing is, I would never give an open question to them to say, when would be a good time for you to go? Because then they get to choose, and they get to dictate, and they automatically feel like your time is free. If you are to say to them, you know, I've got some time that I could go show you, you know, the homes tomorrow afternoon between 2 and 4, or we could go on Wednesday between, you know, 9 and 12. Which of those works better for you? Give them a couple options. If those don't work, then give them another option. But don't leave it open for them to get to decide, because they will wear you out, especially buyers. They just run you ragged. They go when they want to go. They got things they're doing, of course, so they want you to be working around them, and, you know, which is great. You need to accommodate. But again, when you're going to be a self-employed entrepreneur, make sure that you put those boundaries, and, you know, make people know that you have times that you're working during the day. If you got family members constantly asking you to do things during the day, my parents do that to me a lot. Hey, what are you doing today? And every day I have to say, I'm working. Well, do you want to go to lunch? Do you want to go this? Do you want to go that? And, you know, and sometimes that's okay, but other times I just can't. I'm busy, and if I keep doing that every day, then I'm never going to get any business going. So stick with what you say you're going to do, and set that as a rule. Of course, thoroughly investigate homes you're interested in, and ask plenty of questions. You should make a wise and informed purchase decision. And that's where, you know, you can have the discussion after that about buyer due diligence and all those kind of things. So, so then, of course, the home search. So, of course, they decide to purchase a home. Then they consult with you at iPro. And then they go through each one of these steps. It's kind of a no-brainer, but to a new buyer that has never done this before, it's really complicated. And so, you know, this is kind of giving them a guide of how it's going to work. I actually like this one a little bit better, because it goes through more of all the other aspects of it besides just us showing them homes and writing offers. So basically, it takes them through what the title company does, how they actually pull things, examine things, get a commitment, get settlement. Then it talks about the lender and what the lender's responsibilities are. And then it also talks about the middle part where the contract is signed. It talks about all the different sections that we go through. So there's a lot of things that go on with the process of buying and selling homes. And I think that if people were to really, really look at this in detail, and you were to show this to people, even especially listings that talk about, well, I'm not going to list with a realtor because they charge too much, or, you know, it's just, it's too expensive. We can do it ourselves. I think if you were to give them something like this to show them what all is involved with all the sides of it, they may look at it differently and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize there was so much, you know, to do and cover with this. So a great buyer's agent is more than a taxi cab driver. So nowadays, it typically seems like to me that the buyers drive separately. It used to be where they always rode with you. And so it didn't matter if there was 2 of them, 4 of them, got the kids, everybody, they jumped in your car, you took them around, which in some ways was, to me, it seems like it was better. I got to know them. We got to, you know, joke and laugh, and their family was there. So we kind of got to build a relationship that way. But now with the virus and everything going around and stuff, I mean, that's just the last thing anybody wants to do is pile a bunch of people in their car. So just remember that you're not there to just drive people around to look at houses. You need to make sure that they are following everything in instruction that you're telling them that they need to do. And those are the things that we just talked about. So once you get past that and you've answered all their questions and you've decided, you know, yep, you're the person they're going to work with. You guys are having those conversations. Now's the time to talk about a exclusive buyer broker agreement and agency disclosure. This, I think, is one of the hardest forms for agents to present to their clients and have them go through it and explain it to them effectively. And I think most of the time it's because they are scared because they don't want them to say, well, I don't want you to represent me, or I don't want to sign a contract with somebody that I hardly know. So if you understand what's on this contract and what it means, it will help so much that you won't even stumble over this. This will just be part of your presentation. And if you don't stumble, they won't stumble. So I'm not going to go through and read this line by line, especially like newer agents and, you know, I don't know, even people that have been in the business longer, but don't do a lot of transactions. I just suggest you review these regularly because they change the wording in them all the time. But the main thing about this is, of course, you always want to make sure that whoever is buying the property is whoever's going to be the buyers on it. You need to make sure all their names are on here. So husband, wife, brother, sister, whoever it happens to be that are buying a home together, make sure that all the parties are signed on here. And then, of course, you as the agent on here in the company. So, but the terms of the agreement, section number 1, is the one area that gets missed and done incorrectly most of the time. So on the terms of agreement, of course, you've got the buyer's agent, which would be you, starting the effective date, which would be, we'll go over that at the bottom, which would be the day they sign it, receive copies, you know, all of those things. But this section is actually when it ends. It's not when it begins. So a lot of people will date these the same date that they're filling it out, and it's already expired before they've even started. So that's why I highlighted this. So it's the ending date, and it's always at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So just be aware that if you're working with buyers and say you had a 2-month or a 3-month contract, and all of a sudden that 3 months is up, and then it's been a week later, and now they found something finally, and now they're going to write an offer, make sure that you extend that to get it to be effective longer if you need to do that. Just make sure your dates are in line. So anyway, it is as of the ending date or the closing of the acquisition of a property, whichever occurs first, which is called the initial term. And it's for you in locating and negotiating for the acquisition of a property. So there's 2 sections. It's A or B. It's not both. So make sure if you're going to fill this out, if you have a buyer that is just adamant about, you know what, we only want you to write this offer for this house. That's it. We're not signing anything for anything else. That's okay. Then in that case, you would put the location of that property, which is on B. So if it's just, you know, ABC Z Street, you know, it would be for that property only. So you wouldn't fill out the county section. Or you could do in blank county, which you could use, you could say all Utah counties. Whatever you're going to do there, just make sure you spell it out so everybody is in agreement to it and they understand it. So if it's only going to be Weber County, Davis County, Washington County, whatever it happens to be, I would suggest if you're working in more than one county, you just put all counties. And then that way you're covered. You don't have to worry about it later. And of course, during the initial term of the exclusive buyer broker agreement and any extensions thereafter, the buyer agrees not to enter into another buyer broker agreement with any real estate agent or brokerage. People miss that all the time because they don't review this. They don't go over these contracts with people, not even close to well enough so they understand it. So what I would suggest is that if there are sections in contracts or anything that you're going to be doing with them, that you want to make sure, number one, you don't forget to tell them, and the number two, you want to point out to them and make sure they see it, I would highlight it with a highlighter, just the sections that you know are very important. And that to me would be one of those that it would say, and you could just do it where it says the buyer agrees not to enter into another buyer broker agreement. You could just highlight that so that they see it. Even have them initial it so you know they're paying attention. And of course, brokerage fee, if during the initial term or any extension of the initial term, buyer or any other person acting in the buyer's behalf acquires any interest in any real property as referenced in section 1 above, buyer agrees to pay to the company or brokerage fee in the amount of blank and blank. So with our company, we have our addendum that we do for the compliance fee, and that's the $150 that we collect. So what I would suggest is you could either just put the percentage here that they would be charged. Let's say it's 3% is what you're saying. Hey, you know, we're going to collect 3%. And then if you want to do an addendum, there is a section that you can do an addendum. I personally don't like telling people right here on brokerage fee that it's only 3%, and then later on in the contract saying, oh, by the way, you got to pay $150 too. So what I would typically do is where it says the amount of, I would put $150 as per the compliance addendum, you know, or whatever. You can just spell it out however you want to, but, and then and 3%. So you've got both on there. It used to be and or. And so make sure that you just spell it out, no matter how you're going to do it. Make sure that they understand there's all those fees are involved. If you're not going to charge the compliance fee and you're going to pay it, then you don't need the compliance addendum. So then you would just you could put $150, and then you could put next to that to be paid by the buyer's agent. If you wanted to put that on there so they're aware that you're paying for something for them, you can do that. If you write it in there of $150 and you negotiate that and you want to cross it out and have them initial and you initial so that they're aware that that was something that they would have paid, but you're going to pay now, that's fine too. So as long as everybody's on the same page. So of course, where I've got it highlighted, if the BAC is less than the amount shown above, so the BAC is on the multiple listing system where the listing agent puts in what they're willing to give a cooperating agent. So if a BAC on there shows 2%, you're getting 2%. You could have 3 on here and you could go after the buyer for the other 1%. I would say that's something that you need to weigh out and decide if it's worth it, or have that, you know, discussion with them ahead of time. But typically in the past, when I've had these, I usually accept whatever it is that the seller's agent is offering on the BAC. Doesn't mean you have to. But if it's going to be 3% on here and they only pay 2, then your buyer actually is responsible to pay that difference, that you could go after them for that. So it says buyer will pay the difference at closing if the property is not listed with a brokerage in the absence of a commission agreement. So for sale by owner, with the owner of the selected property, the brokerage fee shown above shall be paid by the buyer. So if the seller's not willing to pay it, then the buyer still has to pay it. And then of course, unless agreed in writing by the buyer and the company, the brokerage fee shown above shall be due and payable on, and there's different times that this could happen. A, it could be if it's a purchase, the date of recording of the closing documents, or B, if it's a lease, it's the effective date of the lease. So if they're going to lease the home, rent the home, and that starts a month from now, then that's when the commission would be due, is right at that time. And then of course, if it's an option to purchase, then it's the date the option agreement is signed. So basically it's kind of the same thing. We're going to lease the property with the option to purchase it later on. So if they decide they're going to do the option, the date the agreement is signed for them to go ahead and buy the home is when that would come due. If the transaction is prevented by the default of the buyer, the compensation shall be paid immediately payable to the company. So if the buyer defaults and doesn't show up to closing and they passed all their deadlines, so they're not getting earnest money back, you know, and all those things, then they could have to pay the brokerage fee as well. Any questions on brokerage fees and how that all works? Okay, we'll move on to duties of limited agent. So just so you understand that when you're talking to your buyers and your sellers, you have the okay with your sellers if they sign the listing agreement and agree to it, to show buyers the properties. However, same thing with your buyer. If you're showing buyers a property that is listed, you have to let them know that you represent the seller. You don't represent them. There is an opportunity that you could represent both parties. However, you need to let them know that you can't provide the same undivided loyalty, confidentiality, and disclosure to both of those parties because you are a limited agent. If somebody in our office, whether it be the St. George office and the Clearfield office, whichever, if it's all within the same company and somebody has a listing and the other agent has the buyer, we're still considered limited agents because the broker represents both because it's under the same company. So even if you're not representing both of the parties, but we have it within the company, you still need to make sure you get a limited agency agreement signed. Of course, professional advice, the company and the buyer's agent were trained in marketing real estate. So we do advise them that they may want to get a third party to meet any of the needs that they might have. Things that they may want to do that with is they may want to have somebody, of course, go out and get professional advice on the condition of the property, tax and legal matters. There could be physical and legal conditions of the property that need to be looked at. Any of the appliances, you know, any of those kind of things that they want to look into, they need to go seek the advice of people that are licensed in those areas. So be careful not to ever give advice on something like any of these kind of things. If they ask you, you need to refer them to somebody. Dispute resolution. Oh, something I want to talk about too really quick is on the inspections. Make sure that you never call and order the inspection yourself. Always have your clients call and arrange for the inspections, termite inspection, you know, whatever it happens to be, let them call and make those arrangements so that it doesn't come back on you. Of course, dispute resolution just states on here that it shall first be submitted to mediation through a mediator before it goes to any kind of judicial process. And if that happens, everybody gets their own attorneys. Of course, they have to pay for their own attorneys. Buyer's authorizations. So this authorizes the buyer gives you authorization after the closing of the property. So because Utah is a non-disclosure state, they're not able to put on the county records and things the exact amount of what a loan was for when a buyer takes out a loan or how much they purchased the property for. This gives us the okay to say we can disclose after closing to each MLS in which the company participates, the final terms and sales price and property acquired by the buyer. They can communicate with the buyer for purposes afterwards for real estate related soliciting, trying to get more business from them. And then the buyer further agrees that in any transaction for the acquisition of any property, the earnest money deposit may be placed into an interest-bearing account. They call that URHOF, and it's basically a housing opportunity fund that they put together. So we don't do that because we don't have a trust account in our office. We go through the title company. So that would not be something that would apply there. However, they have to disclose it. So, okay, so on the attachments on number 10 then, part of the buyer due diligence is the same as the listing agreement. There's other forms that go along with that are incorporated into it and that make that part of the agreement. And so with the buyer broker agreement, the buyer due diligence checklist form and the wire fraud alert disclosure is part of this contract. So that's just part of what's included with this. Then if you needed to do the additional compliance fee addendum with this to have them pay the $150 compliance fee, that's where you would check R. So you would check there are additional terms. And then I've got an example on there right there that says, example compliance fee addendums or any other agreements made between you and the buyer. Say you have a buyer that has already looked at another home before. Probably a good example would be they're maybe going to buy thinking about buying their grandma's house or something. If they say, you know, if we buy that house, then, you know, we're not going to have to pay you the 3%, and we're not going to have to, you know, have them pay you 3%. So if you wanted to say there's an exception to this, that would be an addendum as well. So you could just do an addendum that says that if the buyer purchases the property located at, you know, XYZ, whatever, that there would be no brokerage fee collected. Equal housing opportunity, of course, we have to comply with local and fair housing laws. And that's just to let the buyers know that we can't discriminate against people. We can't decide, hey, we're going to let these people come in and look at the house, or we're not, or whatever. So they need to be aware that that applies to them the same when they're asking us to look for homes for them, and they're saying, find a good neighborhood for me, or they say, you know what, you know, I don't want to be in bad parts of Ogden or whatever it happens to be. Don't assume you don't get to decide where those bad parts of Ogden are. You need to tell them that they need to give you coordinates of the areas they want to be in. Number 12, electronic transmission and counterparts, of course, including email and fax. And we also now have electronic signatures that we do. So those are as good as an original as far as these forms are concerned. Due on sale clause. Sometimes there is a due on sale clause that the seller has, excuse me, on their loan. But basically what it is it says that if they say got an FHA loan on the home, that they have to live there as their primary residence, and it can't be a rental. So say somebody lists their home on the MLS and they list it on there that the buyer is going to maybe do like a lease back or seller financing or something like that. And you find out later that it was an FHA loan and that's not allowed. That's what they're talking about here. The lender could call the loan due if they know that the owner has moved out of the property and is doing some type of a seller financing or a lease option. So anyway, that's a good question to always ask your sellers as well when you're listing a property. Entire agreement, of course, the buyer broker agreement, including the buyer due diligence checklist and the wire fraud alert disclosure is all part of this contract, and then any other addendums that you add. And then effective date. So the effective date that the buyer broker agreement comes into effect has to be these following things. So A, the buyer and the authorized buyer's agent or broker have signed the exclusive buyer broker agreement. So if you have the buyer sign it and you haven't signed it and gave them a copy of that yet, it's not in effect. So B is the authorized buyer's agent and broker has received a mutually signed copy of the exclusive buyer broker agreement signed. So just keep in mind that if you have them sign it and then you go back to the office and you sign it, but you don't give them a copy of it signed, then it's not legit. It's not valid. Okay, that was fast. I got through that class pretty fast today. It's easier when there's only a couple people and I don't have a lot of people making comments, but do you guys have any questions, comments?
You did a good job, Cindy. You made it very understanding.
Yeah, I feel like it was pretty informative. I was gonna just ask, where can I find that form? Is that something I can just look up, or?
Yeah, you can. Or so are you talking about the buyer due diligence and
yeah. The agency disclosure mostly was what I wanted to go through.
Okay, so when you go on to the MLS, I'm not sure, are you guys part of the Wasatch Front MLS? Do you know? I can't remember. They should have the forms.
Yeah, I think we're part of a separate one in St. George, but
they should have a section on the MLS that has all the approved forms that are through the state.
Okay.
The state has done. If not, I know that we have them in our library. So if you go to the iPro library, you look for buyer forms and it will be in there. All the forms you need are in there. So yeah, I would suggest you go in and you print off everything that has to do with a buyer and just put it in front of you and put it in a binder It's really nice to review them because sometimes, like these classes are nice, but we only do them once a week. And so you only get an hour of it. But in the meantime, if you have something come up and you're unaware, like you have a buyer and you haven't even had a chance to look at the buyer due diligence checklist and all those things yet, reach out to your broker, or if your broker's busy, reach out to me and ask questions, because these guys, I can tell you, the one thing that I love the most about this company is everybody is like on board to help everybody. It doesn't matter which office you're with. So, but, and if it's in the evening or a weekend and you can't get a hold of anybody, call me. You're always welcome to call me.
Okay.
Questions, okay? So yeah, I don't want anybody to ever be out there like I was, just like clueless and having to figure it out as I go, because that's not fun.
I'm sure I'm going to run into my clueless moments, but it's good to know that there's people out there. So
yeah, there's always somebody that will help you. So yeah, reach out and ask questions anytime. And nobody will ever think that, oh my gosh, you don't know that, because believe me, we know that they don't teach you this stuff in school. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, so that's the class for today. And then again, it'll just start again next Tuesday at the same time, and it'll go for the next 4 to 5 weeks, depending on how long it takes to get through them. But same time every Tuesday.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
Okay, you're welcome. You guys have a good day. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
You too. Appreciate it.
Okay, you bet. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.